A big dig is getting underway in Poland in search of a mystery train filled with treasures.
Beneath the forests of Poland, a mystery has lingered for 80 years. A Nazi train packed with stolen gold, priceless art, and long-lost secrets vanished without a trace in the final days of World War II.
Been a frenzy of activity in Poland after the supposed discovery of a Nazi treasure train that went missing in 1945.
Was it destroyed, hidden, or is it still waiting, buried deep in the Owl Mountains? Join us as we follow the clues, sift through fact and fiction, and uncover the truth behind one of history's most enduring legends, the missing Nazi gold train. In the final months of World War II, as Nazi Germany crumbled under pressure from advancing Allied forces, stories began to emerge of a secret train loaded with stolen treasures. According to these accounts, the train disappeared somewhere in southern Poland near the city of Wałbrzych. It was said to be carrying tons of gold bars, crates of precious jewels, and priceless works of art looted from across Europe. Over the decades, this rumor evolved into one of the most enduring legends of the war, the Nazi gold train. The idea of the train isn't entirely baseless. During the war, the Nazis systematically looted a massive amount of wealth from the countries they occupied. This included not only state reserves of gold and currency, but also private assets, cultural artifacts, and artwork. Much of it was documented, moved through official channels, and even stored in secure underground vaults as the Allies closed in. By late 1944, Nazi leaders were already planning for defeat. Allied troops were pressing in from the west, and Soviet forces were advancing rapidly from the east. Berlin was no longer safe, and attention turned to the mountains of southern Germany and Poland. These areas offered not only natural cover, but also an existing network of tunnels, mines, and isolated train routes, ideal for hiding sensitive cargo. High-ranking officials in the regime, including Hermann Göring and Walter Funk, were directly involved in moving these treasures. Göring, head of the Luftwaffe and a key figure in the theft of European art, was responsible for transporting thousands of works from museums and private collections. Funk, as president of the Reichsbank, helped oversee the movement of national currency and gold reserves. Records from the time confirm that over 1,000 tons of gold were prepared for transport, much of it stored in rail cars departing from Berlin. One particular route has captured public attention for decades. It begins in the city of Krakow and runs west through the Lower Silesian region, not far from the Owl Mountains. According to some wartime records, a train left Krakow station on January 18, 1945. It was classified as special military freight, consisting of 20 cars. 3 days later, the train allegedly vanished near Wałbrzych. No final destination was recorded, and its contents were never recovered. What gives this story weight is not just what's missing, but what was found elsewhere. In central Germany, American forces discovered a major Nazi hoard in the Merkers salt mine. Hidden deep underground, it included more than 100 tons of gold, along with foreign currency, jewelry, and valuable documents. Each item was carefully cataloged, with serial numbers matching Reichsbank records. There were even crates of national treasures stolen from occupied countries, including the Netherlands and France. Photographs from the time show American soldiers standing beside piles of gold bricks in wooden crates, evidence of just how far the Nazis went to protect their stolen wealth. The discovery at Merkers proved two things. First, that Nazi leaders actively tried to hide their most valuable assets. And second, that those assets could be successfully tracked and recovered using documentation. And yet, despite extensive post-war efforts by Allied teams, nothing was ever found to confirm the existence of a similar shipment near Wałbrzych. No official railway logs mention a train carrying gold through the region. SS files from the time are incomplete, and what remains doesn't include references to large-scale treasure transport in the area. This lack of records has fueled decades of speculation. Could the gold train have been so secret that all documentation was destroyed? Or is it possible that the story was simply a mix of wartime confusion and post-war imagination? Adding to the mystery is the area's geography. Wałbrzych sits at the edge of the Owl Mountains, a forested region with a long history of mining. During the war, the Nazis began constructing a massive underground tunnel complex there, known as Project Reese. Built largely by forced labor from concentration camps, the project was never completed. Its true purpose remains unclear, but theories range from secret weapons factories to hidden bunkers for Nazi leadership. These unfinished tunnels, some still sealed to this day, have made the perfect setting for rumors of a hidden treasure train. Over the years, various people have claimed to have seen or heard something that supports the legend. There are eyewitnesses who say they watched flatbed rail cars loaded with large wooden crates being moved late at night. Others remember SS guards warning workers to keep quiet about unusual cargo. In one account from the 1960s, a Polish railway man said he was ordered to attach 2 unmarked freight cars to a stationary train near Sobon station, close to where the train is believed to have disappeared. The crates were reportedly stamped with Nazi eagle emblems. Of course, none of these stories come with physical proof. The official station logs from the period list nothing out of the ordinary, mostly coal and military equipment. Still, these accounts have been passed down in the region for generations, and in the absence of clear facts, they've taken on a life of their own. The idea of a hidden Nazi treasure isn't unique to Poland. Similar stories have surfaced across Europe, from sunken submarines in the Baltic Sea to lost archives in Austrian mountains. What makes the Wałbrzych gold train different is how persistent the legend has been. It's not just a tale from the past. It's a mystery that continues to draw attention from amateur historians, professional researchers, and fortune seekers alike. What makes the story so compelling is the possibility that it could be true. The Nazis certainly had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to move enormous quantities of stolen wealth. They had access to trains, tunnels, manpower, and secrecy. If they did hide one final shipment of looted gold, it would make sense to bury it in an area like Lower Silesia, remote, mountainous, and already full of underground facilities. At the same time, there are strong reasons to remain skeptical. None of the key indicators seen in other treasure recoveries, such as transport manifests, serial numbers, or photographic records, have ever turned up for this supposed train. And with each passing year, the chance of finding something grows smaller, especially as the remaining physical evidence erodes and memories fade. Still, the legend remains, perhaps because it speaks to something bigger than just gold bars or stolen art. It's a story about the final days of a brutal regime, a time when chaos and secrecy collided. It's also about the power of rumor, how a single missing train can become a symbol for all that was lost, hidden, or never accounted for during the war. In April 2015, the legend of the Nazi gold train suddenly returned to public attention with a force that surprised even seasoned historians. 2 men, Piotr Koper, a Polish amateur historian, and Andreas Richter, a German author and explorer, claimed they had discovered what many believed to be the missing train. Their announcement, supported by images from ground-penetrating radar scans, sparked headlines around the world and breathed new life into a story that had remained in the shadows for decades. Koper and Richter's findings came after months of surveying a forested hillside near the Polish town of Wałbrzych, not far from where the train was rumored to have disappeared in 1945. They claimed their scans showed a long metallic object buried underground, measuring around 100 meters in length, roughly the size of a train with multiple carriages. The shape was consistent with the dimensions of a freight convoy, and the site was close to where earlier stories had placed the missing transport. The pair used radar equipment borrowed from a German mining company to conduct their scans. The results were dramatic enough to attract the attention of Poland's Deputy Minister of Culture at the time, Piotr Żuchowski. Speaking to the press, Żuchowski stated that he was more than 99% sure that the scans indicated a buried train. His public endorsement gave the claim a level of credibility that most treasure legends never receive. The media response was immediate and intense. News agencies from around the world picked up the story. CNN asked whether Poland had found its own version of El Dorado. The BBC flew helicopters over the site, filming the overgrown rail stub that poked through the earth. Polish newspapers speculated about the possible contents of the train: gold bars, looted art, secret Nazi documents, even advanced weapons. The discovery quickly became a national fascination, and the quiet hills outside Wałbrzych turned into the focus of global curiosity. Local authorities reacted with cautious optimism. The mayor of Wałbrzych, Roman Siłamy, welcomed the attention, and said the find could bring new economic hope to a town still struggling with post-industrial decline. Tourism officials began promoting the region as a site of historical intrigue. Hotels reported a sudden spike in bookings. Souvenir shops began selling gold train-themed merchandise. Guided tours were offered to nearby coal shafts that had been transformed into makeshift treasure trails. But as excitement grew, experts started asking harder questions. Not everyone was convinced by the radar images. Professor Janusz Madej of AGH University in Krakow reviewed the same scan data and warned that underground reflections could easily be caused by natural features such as fractured rock, boulders, or water-filled cavities. He pointed out that radar echoes often appear convincing, but without physical confirmation, the images proved nothing. The National Geological Institute added its voice to the debate, stating that the area's geology was complex and prone to misleading radar readings. The hillside, they explained, was composed of layers of shale and sediment that could easily produce false signals. According to their analysis, similar anomalies had been found in nearby areas where no human-made structures existed at all. Skeptics also scrutinized the backgrounds of the two men behind the discovery. Both Koper and Richter had previously been involved in other treasure-related projects that had not produced conclusive results. Some critics accused them of promoting sensational claims to gain attention. Koper defended their work, saying they had followed scientific methods and submitted their findings to a geological journal. He also insisted that their only goal was to bring historical truth to light. Despite the skepticism, interest in the project continued to build. In October 2016, Koper and Richter were granted permission by a court to begin formal excavations on private land adjacent to the site of their radar survey. The excavation was funded partly by private investors from Poland and Germany, who pledged over 200,000 euros to support the dig. Excavation began with heavy equipment. Bulldozers cleared away sections of the hillside, while drilling rigs bored deep into the suspected tunnel entrance. Soil cores were extracted at regular intervals to search for signs of metal, wood, or man-made structures. Local media covered the work extensively, with reporters posting daily updates on social media and news outlets running live broadcasts. Headlines read, "Day 6, nothing yet," followed by Day 10, still drilling, and Day 14, rock fragments only. As weeks passed, hopes began to fade. The excavation teams encountered solid bedrock at several locations. Drill bits snapped on hard granite. Cores pulled from the earth revealed only natural materials, layers of clay, fragments of stone, and occasional traces of decayed timber. No signs of train tracks, no iron rails, no crates. Nothing remotely resembling a treasure train was found. By late December, the Ministry of Culture intervened. Officials reviewed the results and concluded that there was no scientific basis to continue. They ordered the excavation to stop, citing concerns over safety, environmental damage, and the lack of any supporting evidence. The site was filled in, the equipment was removed, and the forest was left to grow back over the disturbed ground. The media, which had once celebrated the discovery, turned sharply. Headlines now called it the gold train hoax of Wałbrzych. Journalists who had once speculated about hidden riches began asking whether the whole episode had been a carefully staged publicity stunt. But for some, the disappointment didn't erase the deeper appeal of the story. Many locals remained invested in the legend. Tourism in Wałbrzych continued to benefit from the attention. Tour operators still ran guided visits to old railway tunnels, bunkers, and mines. Some tourists came out of simple curiosity, while others still hoped to stumble upon something overlooked. Souvenir shops continued selling maps of suspected train routes. Gold train safaris remained a niche attraction. For treasure hunters, the failed dig was just one more chapter in a much larger mystery. Some argued that the excavators had simply searched in the wrong place. Others believed the train might lie deeper underground, hidden behind a collapsed tunnel wall or beneath layers of earth that radar could not fully penetrate. More advanced tools, they said, would be needed to settle the matter once and for all. The 2015 to 2016 events also raised broader questions about how technology, media, and public belief interact. Ground-penetrating radar is a powerful tool, but it's not foolproof. Interpreting its results requires expertise and context. In the case of Wałbrzych, the radar image seemed to confirm a pre-existing story, but in reality, it may have just amplified natural features that coincidentally matched expectations. What happened in Wałbrzych serves as a reminder that legends can gain momentum quickly, especially when fueled by official statements and sensational headlines. It also highlights how difficult it can be to separate myth from reality, particularly when both are wrapped in the mystery of war, secrecy, and the promise of unimaginable wealth. Despite the outcome, many still believe the gold train is real. For them, the 2015 radar anomaly was just one clue among many. They argue that the train could lie a few hundred meters away, buried in a different part of the tunnel network, or even sealed behind reinforced concrete walls. They point to gaps in wartime records, missing pages from station logs, and stories from elderly witnesses as signs that the truth is still buried. The train has become more than just a historical curiosity. It's now part of the cultural identity of the region. Whether it exists or not, it has brought global attention to Wałbrzych and inspired new generations to explore, investigate, and learn. And in that sense, the legend continues to achieve something real, drawing people into history, encouraging debate, and keeping alive the memory of a chaotic and shadowy chapter of the 20th century. As the dust settled from the 2015 excavation attempt in Wałbrzych, attention turned towards science. If the gold train truly existed, many believed only modern technology could find it. Ground-penetrating radar had reignited interest, but it had also highlighted the limits of what could be trusted without physical proof. Over the following years, researchers, geologists, and archaeologists began to look at the legend with a more methodical approach, asking what could realistically be confirmed and what couldn't. The first step was to re-examine the original radar results. Experts reviewed the 2015 scans and compared them to similar data collected from nearby quarries with comparable geology. In many cases, the scans showed strong reflections at certain depths, just like the ones seen near the alleged gold train site. However, no trains or tunnels were present in those control areas. The reflections were caused by natural factors, layers of broken rock, air pockets, and underground water channels. These findings suggested that radar alone was not enough to prove anything. To follow up, geologists turned to drill core analysis. This process involves drilling narrow vertical shafts into the ground to extract long cylinders of earth and rock. By studying the layers in these cores, scientists can get a clear picture of what lies beneath the surface without large-scale excavation. In Wałbrzych, several core samples were taken from the hillside near the site of the radar anomaly. What they found didn't match the idea of a buried train. The samples revealed only typical materials: shale, clay, small stones, and occasional bits of decayed timber likely left over from past mining operations. No metals, no wooden crates, no evidence of rails or structural steel. Some of the wooden fragments recovered were tested to determine their age. The results showed that the timber likely dated back to the early 1900s, long before the final years of World War II. This suggested the site may once have been part of an old coal mining tunnel, rather than a secret military installation. The absence of iron-rich sediment or rust particles, things that would be expected if a metal train had been buried there, further undermined the case for the gold train. Archaeologists also examined the construction of the tunnel entrance itself. The brickwork and design were analyzed in detail. What they found pointed to standard 19th century mining techniques. The materials used were common in civilian industrial projects from that period, rather than the reinforced concrete and steel commonly used by Nazi engineers in military or high-security facilities. Wehrmacht blueprints and SS construction guidelines from the time show a preference for heavily fortified bunkers, with thick concrete slabs, steel doors, and drainage systems. None of those features were present at the Wałbrzych tunnel. This architectural mismatch raised more doubts. If the tunnel had been intended to hide one of the most valuable trains in history, it seemed unlikely the Nazis would have chosen a basic coal shaft with no special modifications. Further interior mapping of the tunnel showed uneven floors and debris piles, hardly suitable conditions for parking a train, let alone one carrying delicate art or bullion. Alongside physical testing, researchers returned to the historical record. Archivists combed through wartime documents, including railway manifests, military dispatches, and Reichsbank inventories. The records for Wałbrzych station in early 1945 were incomplete, but those that did survive showed routine activity. Coal shipments, troop transports, and military supplies were noted, standard movements for that chaotic period. But there was no mention of a special train carrying valuables. Nothing in the surviving German, Polish, or Allied files gave any indication that a hidden convoy had passed through or gone missing. By contrast, when real Nazi treasure hoards were found, like those in the Merkers and Altusay salt mines, paper trails were always involved. The Allies didn't stumble upon them by accident. They followed leads from captured documents, transport orders, and serial numbers listed in Reichsbank logs. Every gold bar, coin, or artwork found was backed by paperwork that confirmed its origin and value. In the case of Merkers, U.S. Army engineers used train manifests and storage files to match each item with its point of departure. Soldiers were photographed next to stacks of gold, each crate clearly marked and accounted for. This level of detail is completely missing from the Wałbrzych story. There are no inventory sheets, no shipping orders, and no recovered tags or labels that link any supposed cargo to a real transport. While it's possible that records were destroyed, historians point out that it would have required a level of secrecy and document control far beyond what is seen in other wartime operations. Given how much the Nazis relied on meticulous records, especially regarding valuables, this absence speaks volumes. Still, some researchers aren't ready to dismiss the possibility entirely. They point to emerging technologies that could provide more accurate information than radar or drill cores. One such method is muon tomography. It works by detecting subatomic particles called muons, which constantly pass through the Earth's surface. When muons hit dense materials like metal, their paths change. Special sensors placed around a tunnel or cave can detect these changes and create an image of what lies inside. Unlike radar, muon imaging can penetrate much deeper and with more precision. Early tests of muon tomography have shown promising results in archaeological studies, including the mapping of voids in ancient pyramids. A pilot project near the Bukowka Tunnel in southern Poland showed slight anomalies that some interpret as possible signs of human-made structures. However, the method is expensive, slow, and requires months of uninterrupted data collection. So far, no large-scale muon project has been approved for the Wałbrzych region, partly due to funding challenges and conservation concerns. Access to many of the tunnels believed to be linked to the gold train is also tightly restricted. The Polish government, in cooperation with heritage and environmental agencies, controls large parts of the area due to risks posed by unstable tunnels, unexploded ordnance, and protected wildlife habitats. The Owl Mountains, where many of the most intriguing sites are located, are home to several bat colonies and are subject to strict environmental laws. These limitations mean that most exploratory work must be non-invasive, further complicating any search for buried objects. As the physical and scientific case for the gold train weakens, comparisons to known Nazi hoards only make the story seem more unlikely. In places like Altusay, Siegen, and Nuremberg, the treasures found were always accompanied by documentation. These sites weren't just rumors. They were part of a deliberate plan by the Nazi leadership to safeguard stolen assets in case of defeat. The finds were made possible because people knew what to look for and where to look. In the case of Wałbrzych, even with decades of searching, no one has found a single artifact tied to a gold train. No crates, no markings, no recovered contents. That said, the legend continues to inspire new investigations, especially among amateur historians and technology enthusiasts. Some believe that combining tools, radar, satellite imaging, historical data, and muon detectors could still produce results. Others suggest that the real secret lies not in one train, but in multiple smaller caches scattered across the region, hidden in sections of the Project Reese tunnels or buried beneath disused rail spurs. Even with little hard evidence, the gold train story remains compelling. It's not just about the treasure, it's about what people want to believe. In a region marked by war, forced labor, and post-war economic decline, the possibility of hidden riches offers a different kind of hope, one tied to rediscovery, justice, and the idea that something valuable might still be waiting beneath the surface. Despite years of investigation, scientific testing, and historical research, the story of the Nazi gold train remains unresolved. No conclusive evidence has been found, and yet the legend refuses to disappear. Instead, it has evolved into a more complex narrative, one that now blends history, science, folklore, and modern exploration. While many aspects of the original rumor have been challenged, unanswered questions continue to fuel speculation and new leads are still being pursued. One area that continues to draw attention is the vast tunnel network built during the war under the name Project Reese, or Giant. This was one of Nazi Germany's largest and most secretive construction projects involving an extensive system of underground facilities carved into the Owl Mountains in Lower Silesia. Between 1943 and early 1945, thousands of forced laborers, many of them prisoners from the Gross Rosen concentration camp, were put to work digging into the mountain rock. They created miles of tunnels, some reaching hundreds of meters in length, designed to hide factories, military headquarters, or possibly something more. The true purpose of Project Reese is still debated. Some historians believe it was intended as a relocation site for Hitler's high command, or even as a final stronghold where Nazi leadership could continue operations after the fall of Berlin. Others argue it was meant to house weapons manufacturing plants, including production lines for jet aircraft or V-weapons. What is clear is that construction was never completed. As Soviet forces advanced, work on the tunnels was abandoned. Some entrances were sealed with concrete, while others collapsed naturally over time. Today, only a few parts of the system are open to the public, and many areas remain inaccessible due to safety concerns. This setting has helped the gold train story persist. The tunnels are vast, poorly mapped, and difficult to search thoroughly. The idea that a train, or even part of its contents, could be hidden in a sealed chamber somewhere within Project Reese is not impossible. Over the years, treasure hunters have explored parts of the network, sometimes legally, sometimes not. A few have claimed to hear hollow sounds behind tunnel walls or found strange markings on sealed doors. In one case, a drilling team reported detecting a void behind a concrete barrier, but further investigation showed nothing of significance. As with many parts of this story, the evidence is always just out of reach. There are also modern technologies that may offer new insights. Muon tomography, for example, continues to show promise. By detecting the path of subatomic particles that move through the Earth, researchers can identify hidden spaces and dense objects deep underground. In archaeological contexts, this technique has already helped uncover unknown chambers inside ancient pyramids. Applying the same method to the Owl Mountains could, in theory, confirm whether any concealed vaults exist within the Reese tunnels. Some early tests have produced minor anomalies, but a full-scale study has yet to be carried out due to cost, logistics, and the need for permits from environmental and heritage authorities. Satellite radar and multispectral imaging have also been proposed as tools for detecting subtle changes in vegetation and soil composition that could hint at underground disturbances. These methods, combined with drone photography, could offer a new layer of detail without disturbing the ground. So far, they've shown some unexplained patterns near tunnel entrances and along disused railway lines, but none have led to a confirmed discovery. Beyond the technical side, historians are still combing through archives in Germany and Poland. Occasionally, fragments of wartime documents surface that renew interest in the story. One such document, found in a damaged German railway ledger, mentions a special military transport, leaving Görlitz on January 18, 1945, the same day the gold train was reportedly seen leaving Krakow. The cargo column is partly illegible, but some researchers believe the faded word Wertsachen, or valuables, can be made out. If true, it could offer a rare written reference to a missing convoy. Unfortunately, the page is so degraded that definitive conclusions remain out of reach. Some suggest using spectral imaging to digitally enhance the text, but so far no joint project between German and Polish institutions has been funded to carry this out. Eyewitness accounts also continue to emerge, although verifying them remains difficult. In recent years, a handful of elderly residents in the Wałbrzych area have shared stories passed down through families or remembered from their youth. One man, a former forced laborer, claimed he saw SS guards move heavy wooden crates into a tunnel near Soban during the winter of 1945. The crates, he said, were marked with black eagles. Another individual described seeing unusual train activity during the same period, including flatbed cars that arrived at night and left before dawn. These stories often lack specific dates or corroborating details, but when several accounts begin to overlap, they raise new possibilities worth exploring. At the same time, the physical records from the Wałbrzych train station contain troubling gaps. The logbooks from early 1945 are incomplete, with pages missing or damaged, particularly those covering the days when the train allegedly disappeared. Some historians believe these sections were either lost during the chaos of war or deliberately removed. Copies of train manifests from other stations during that period survive, listing typical shipments such as coal and munitions, but no reference to a special freight convoy. Recovering even fragments of these missing documents could help confirm or deny the train's existence. There are legal and political challenges as well. Under Polish law, any historical artifact more than 100 years old becomes state property, and unauthorized excavation is strictly prohibited. This has discouraged many private search teams who fear legal consequences if they uncover anything of value. On the other hand, government agencies are wary of large-scale digs that could damage protected sites or disturb wildlife. Balancing the desire for discovery with the need for conservation has led to a kind of stalemate, where no one can move forward easily. Some experts have suggested a public-private partnership as a way forward. In this model, private companies would provide equipment and funding for surveys and controlled excavations, while the state would oversee operations and retain ownership of any findings. This approach has worked in other countries, but in Poland, negotiations have so far stalled due to concerns over liability, cost sharing, and how any recovered assets would be distributed or preserved. Despite all of this, interest in the legend has never completely died down. Each year, new teams arrive hoping to be the ones to finally solve the mystery. Some are professional researchers with high-tech equipment. Others are amateurs armed with metal detectors and hope. Some work with permission. Others explore quietly and leave no record. The region has come to embrace this mix of history and myth. Local businesses cater to visitors, tour operators offer guided tunnel walks, and the story of the gold train is now part of the area's cultural identity. In the end, the continued search for the gold train may say more about people than about the past. The desire to find hidden treasure is universal. The idea that something priceless could still be out there, buried beneath the ground, taps into something deep and persistent. It connects to a longing for closure, for rediscovery, for making sense of the unfinished stories left behind by war. What makes the gold train mystery so compelling is not just the treasure itself, but the absence of certainty. Decades of investigation have produced no physical evidence, yet the gaps in the record, the strange radar readings, and the enduring oral accounts all leave just enough room for possibility. Until those gaps are filled, either with hard evidence or definitive proof that nothing is there, the mystery will remain open. And maybe that's part of why it lasts. Some stories survive not because they're proven, but because they resist being dismissed. They live in the space between what we know and what we still hope might be true.